This is the legendary six-wheel Tyrrell P34 from 1976. Now, there's only 7 of these in the world which actually have competed in races, 2 of which unfortunately have now been destroyed, and the other 5 are actually now in private cellars and in museums. But there are some additional ones out there. There is a spare chassis which was never competed in a race, but that is now owned by Jody Scheckter himself. So then if you're in the market to get your own P34, what do? Well, you simply make your own.
Yeah, so around 2018, 2019, we had a client super interested to own and race a P34 Tyrrell. So we went out to the market, looked what was available. Quickly became apparent there's not a big volume of P34 Tyrrells in the world. Only 8 were ever produced in period. Of those 8, 2 were crashed, leaving the quantity at 6, and none of those were being raced. Tried to buy one, that was almost impossible. Every time a bid went in, it had increased by up to £500,000 at a time. In short, there were 3 of us in a supply network that really brought this project from a white piece of paper to life. I project managed it, and a good colleague of mine, Simon Harris, design responsible, so Simon did all the CAD. And then my brother built them, Jonathan Gilligan Bennett, he built the car in the workshop. That was really the core team, that's it. So in producing the car, yeah, 3 really.
The project in total took over 2.5 years, but the first piece of the puzzle was to get the approval from the Tyrrell family themselves.
In this industry, it's been becoming more apparent over the years about copyright and IPR. Clearly it's an iconic design. There was only ever one truly like that. I mean, there was the March version, which had 4 small rear wheels, and Williams did that as well, in fact, with FW08. The most important thing was, to construct the car, Tyrrell had to say yes. The Tyrrell family. Prior to starting this project, 2015, 2016, we were racing quite successfully Tyrrell 10s, Tyrrell 9s, so we already had that relationship. You know, we knew Bob Tyrrell really well. When it came to broaching the subject, could we do this? We want to race. There's no 76 Tyrrells out there. Can we do it? And they said, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do an agreement with you. And what that stopped subsequently is questions about its approval, to a degree its authenticity, because as part of that agreement we had access to the drawings, which was key really. And because of that, we've got an official Tyrrell plate on the car that is, to all intents and purposes, as close as you can get to being a Tyrrell now. Looking over those original plans was incredible, really. It's like a time machine in every sense. You know, they're all hand drawn. Obviously, there's no CAD, so you've got drawings that have been 3/4 done, and then a line through them, and you know, and all that stuff was in there. It's absolutely fantastic to see the detail and who all the original draftsmen were, because they were a small team, so you'd see the same people drawing in the same style. Largely the front of that car, it was reasonably well detailed. It was terrific to see that. And we've got some super cool drawings. You know, all the front suspension arrangement that's as it was, not detailed, but as it was conceived. That wishbone's going to go there. We've got a steering rocket here. This is how we move the steering from the front axle to the second axle. So the car's evolution in period was largely the rear of the car. You know, it was a 007, its predecessor. The front part, however, all new. It's not really a complicated car at all at the back, but you can see where the work went. The work went into this tremendously complicated, particularly chassis construction and the forefront wheels. So the original intention from the client was to have a P34, not something that looked a bit like a P34, but to have a P34 that he could race. That car, we're going to take that around the world and we're going to race it. And in that, we had to have, therefore, a car that was safe, met current safety standards, FIA, insofar as you can with a car from that era, and reliable.
But just before we actually jump into the car and find out the whole build process, I want to thank today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Now, if you're a long-term subscriber, you know I love these guys at Surfshark VPN because I generally use their service every week. Most recent example actually was to watch the film Matilda, because it's freely available in Netflix over in the United States, but not here in the UK. So using their TV app, we literally just changed our location to the United States, opened up Netflix, and bang, it was there straight away. But of course, it's not just for your TV. You can also get it on your phone, on your tablet, or on your computer. And it's not just limited to folk like us in the UK. Surfshark has over 3,000 servers across 100 countries, meaning you can watch even more geo-locked programs and services in different territories. And if you use my promo code MattAmus at checkout, not only will you get an 83% off your plan, you also get 3 extra months for free. Plus, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try all of this out, and if it's not for you, then there is no risk in cancelling. So make sure to click the link in the description below. But now, let's jump into the Tyrrell. Wow, there is not a lot of room.
Of course, in the modern era, we're allowed to do this kind of stuff, which just allows us to monitor what's going on really from a passive point of view.
And it makes sense. You can actually see what temperatures are going, or even if you want to put lap times on and whatnot. I mean, obviously I'm wearing huge shoes which aren't appropriate for it, but
what you do to heel and toe with those, you flick your whole foot.
Oh, so you rotate it like that? Yeah. Oh, okay. I was going to say, because obviously without the cockpit around, the visibility is insane.
Yeah.
but now obviously when the cockpit is on, it's
it's not as bad as you'd think, to be honest.
I'll breathe in. Yeah, that has massively changed things.
But this window was designed for you to be able to see the rear act.
Yeah, because these windows here, you can see straight down. You can sort of just see the fronts as well.
This is one of the older cars we've got here, but even this era, you know, they've paid attention to the fact you've still got to drive it. You know, you've still got to be relatively comfortable in there.
Yeah, so you've got all this space here, especially here as well. Yeah, because you literally put a mug kind of there. Most of the time, it's like you have to put your hand next to your leg, whereas here you do have loads of space either side, especially when changing gear.
It's a real surprise because if you go and sit in that Lotus that's just behind us, there's no...
Oh yeah, you just be like that basically, aren't you?
You'd struggle to get in there. So in the drawing pack we had from Tyrrell, this section of the nose was detailed, but none of the rest of it. So there was a drawing that showed that profile, the width, where it started, where it ended, all that piece was on a drawing, but it wasn't linked to anything else, and there were no drawings of the nose. So we bought a 12 scale Tamiya model off the internet, scanned that in using a laser scanner, imported that into the CAD and surfaced it, and then lo and behold, this profile slotted perfectly in. So in this speck of nose, that all fit together perfectly. Same with the cockpit top. That's a Tamiya-ism. That's all produced in fiberglass as per period. But yeah, we made this terrifically complicated mould to fit all the bits together that were missing. So the hardest part of producing the car is to fill the gaps in, you know, and filling the gaps in for this car. Thankfully, that number of panels was, I would say, relatively small. So the splitter lengths varied a lot. That splitter came out another 2 inches from here. Then the components started flexing. It creates some downforce and start to move. So these little supports went from being small, like these ones, up to this big old strap that kind of lives up here, and you'd see them in period moving around on the photos. But this is largely that's as that car ran 76 Sweden. We've done very little to change it. So the first steps to a project like that are investigative, I would say. Is trying to find all the engineering gaps that you know you're going to have to fill. Obviously, we've got the license agreement and we've got some drawings. It's a Ford Cosworth DFV 3 litre mechanical fuel injection, what we would call a long block old style pump. You can buy those. Gearbox is Hewland. FG 400 in that one. Again, you can buy it, but the castings they've been modified since that car, so we needed to do some tooling. So kind of that bit was all right. Filling the gaps in from the complicated front part was difficult. The starting point was what could we pull together and what couldn't we pull together digitally. Without going and putting a laser scanner over all the surfaces of an existing one, we're going to be left with a big gap that we'd have to freehand. So we were very fortunate to deal with Richard Meal and Hall, who have been long-time supporters of the Tyrrell family and their racing. They allowed us access to a car which we scanned that filled the gaps. Figure out method of manufacture, materials, and who's going to do what. We can't put that part in until we've produced that part. That assembly needs these pieces to be produced. That supplier will only produce those pieces in this batch. So a big supply network, some stuff internal, piecing it together in a logical fashion so that you then start the realization phase. So it's okay, the planning. The next bit is without doubt the trickiest bit. If you drew it correctly and if your project management was good, on paper what you can do is allow all those parts to assemble, to come into the factory, to get checked in against drawing, put on a shelf, and then we wait until we've got enough to produce sub-assemblies to then go, okay, today we're going to get the chassis and we're going to put the fuel cell in it. I have massively glossed over what it is to get a chassis. Those chassis were very difficult to make. Engine onto tub, build it. Clutch on, gearbox on, rear suspension, build it. Pedal box, build it. Hydraulics, lines, build it. Wiring loom inside, dash in and so on. Front suspension on. And then you're at the point there where you can get the fluids in. Once you've got the fluids in, we get to the stage, we call it job listing. You're close enough then to deal with the niggles, things that weren't quite right, you've had to rework them. The final phase really, do a systems check, so you'll preheat the engine, prime the fuel system, bleed the brakes, bleed the clutch and all that sort of stuff, fire the car up, make sure you get all the gears, clutch clears, everything's set correctly. Graphics, test. The chassis was really particularly tricky just due to the nature of its geometry. With the side pods off, you can clearly see a feature, like a triangular feature, which in period was meant to be a fuel cell. But the trouble is when you construct something strong from a thick sheet that's very long and you really don't want to join in it, that sheet's quite difficult to manipulate and then join it to the adjoining sheets. There's a number of panels, rivet lines, folds, how to get the back of a solid rivet dolly right down the chassis in order to be able to then close that rivet from the other side. That was really tricky. And the other thing that we noticed, the 77 car had an awful lot of different stuff on it than the 76 drawing showed, and it was safety stuff. Immediately thought, well, a good idea here is definitely going to be to call some help. So we've got a great relationship with John Gentry, and John was at Tyrrell at the end of this car. So we incorporated very few elements, but a couple of key elements to just strengthen bits that had to remain stronger. Yeah, so I think the biggest differences in manufacturing technology and sort of let's say global engineering since then. So obviously the digital age, you know, we're designing components now on CAD, but when we flat packed all the aluminium panels and we drew in the bends and the hole centers for the rivets, the corresponding holes in the mating panel, very good confidence that they'd line up. And so it's not a case of having to put two panels in, stick a pilot hole through, yeah, that's gone okay. Cleco, there's something like a Cleco pin that holds those panels together, and then, oh, we might be able to just drill a line of rivets now and get that right. It was nothing like that. It was literally a case of what came off the laser cutting and CNC bending fit. The trouble is there's more prep to do that. So the upfront engineering costs are higher, but what you get out is you know, far better, far more sustainable. Late 70s, certainly early 80s, Avon has been a Formula 1 tyre supplier, and Formula 2, and you know, all of UK motorsport really since then. Goodyear did make a tyre of similar size, but not for the front. The P34s were re-raced in the 90s, I think. Avon just made another tool. That tool still exists. So we put an order in around this time of year, sort of January. We'll go off and say, right, this year we're going to need 7 sets of tyres, slicks, and this many wets for the year. We make them in one batch, and they just produce them. It's in the same compound as the rear, which is A11 compound. That's what we've been racing the whole time. We set the car up okay. It lives all right on its tyres. It's reasonably competitive in its class. What we do is, if we're going to do some filming, for example, or we're going to, for the Rush film, we supplied a car for that, and we took Avon off and stenciled Goodyear on. Yeah, I distinctly remember where we were stood when we hit the button the first time, and what happened. Everything that we designed, everything that we conceived to make the cars usable now, raceable in the modern era, just worked. Just straight away, the things have performed terrifically well for what could have happened. You know, it's real kudos to the whole team.
Well, thanks to Alistair and to the team for letting me come down and visit. You want to learn more about them, there are links down in the description below. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.